Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Social Work Bubble podcast. I'm your host, Laura. I'm really excited today. We have Teddy Nguyen with us, a social worker and financial coach. Thank you, Teddy, for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this for what I think we're working on this like the last month or two.
For a while.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, I'm
things
excited.
finally aligned and we are here. And we're getting into a lot of helpful stuff that I think social workers need to hear and need to talk about. But before we dive into it all, can you just go ahead and introduce yourself and kind of your background to the listeners?
Absolutely. Yeah. So my name is Teddy. By training, I'm a social worker. I'm a licensed social worker out in Texas. I'm currently working on my master's at University of Texas at Arlington, which I heard your last guest was from UTA. So
Oh my gosh,
shout
how
out
fun.
UTA. Yeah. But yeah, about 2 years ago, I started my financial coaching journey, and it grew from my passion for personal finance in my own journey and my own like personal life, and
Mhm,
mixing all of that with what we do in social work and life change, behavior change, and all that stuff. It kind of just naturally came about. And then building my practice as a financial coach, getting to talk to people about money issues, debt issues, spending habits, all that stuff has been super fun. This is probably the most fun I've ever had pursuing any like passion project or hobby. So
mhm,
yeah, like my mission really is to make personal finance digestible. Uh, I guess like the little tagline I have is that I help you take control of your money to be your best self at
mhm,
home and at work. And money innervates all areas of our life. It
mhm,
affects how we approach our jobs. It affects how we approach our spouse and our family. So that's really the why behind getting the budget and getting your
mhm.
spending. It's so you have that life and you have that contentment. So that's just a little
Absolutely.
snapshot about who I
Ugh,
am and what I do.
great stuff. I mean, it's exciting because I think that's something where like those social work skills can obviously like be hugely transferable and valuable in that, but also for social workers in general, we have so many bad beliefs around like money and what that
Oh my
means in the
goodness,
social work
yes.
profession. And I think we just all think like, well, we're just in for being poor and having nothing and being wildly in debt, and that's it.
Exactly. And I hear that all the time. And the thing is like it's not that all social workers are bad with money by any means, but
Right.
the ones who are most vocal tend to have a lot of complaints about money. And the
Mhm.
ones who are like pretty good and disciplined, they're just quiet. And so we're in an environment where there's a lot of pessimism about money, which is ironic because we're in a field to help other people come out of their situations. Usually
Yeah.
there's money involved, addictions and stuff like that. But yeah, I hear a lot of things like, I'm just gonna have to work for the state agency until I
Mhm.
turn 65 or 70 and get the pension,
Mhm.
or I'm just, stuck in a nonprofit. I'm never gonna make more than 60, $70,000 a year. But like imagine if we told our clients that they were just stuck, right? Like, oh, this is
Oh,
the best it's
true.
gonna get, right?
Mhm.
So this is just how social workers are paid, or
Mhm.
in the addiction space, like this is just the best your mental health's gonna get. Like it's so
Mhm.
defeating.
It really
And
is.
really want to bring a lot of that hope back because even if you only make 50 or $60,000 a year, you can pay off your debt. You can have a life
Mhm.
full of contentment as long as you just have an understanding of where all your money's going. Because my wife and I have been on a single income for the past couple of years, and a single income as a social worker, right? My wife stays at home
Yeah.
with our kid. We were blessed in terms of how we got our house and the timing of all that stuff.
Mhm.
But even outside of that, like we're able to go on trips and just spend quality time together.
Mhm.
It may not look like what everyone else's life looks like, but that's part of it, right?
Yeah.
Getting the most value out of your money is really my goal with helping people with their money, right?
Mhm.
It's not about becoming rich and having a lot of money, but being most efficient in adding value to your life with
Mhm.
whatever your income is. If it's $50,000 on a single income, or even if you're making 150 as a dual income house, whatever it is
Mhm.
between there.
Yeah. I do. I mean, we can just have such a defeated mentality. And I mean, like, so often, like, what I teach my clients is like the thoughts, feeling, behavior effect. And so if we're thinking in that very defeated manner, why in the world would we want, why would we operate in a way that's like financially well and like contributing to ourselves in any way? So it's this vicious cycle we can get into.
Exactly. And like I used to not think much about belief work and stuff. I'm
Hmm.
like, that's so like woo woo hocus pocus. Like
Hmm.
they just say that because it's motivational and they put it on social media.
Right.
But when you really think about it logically, if you don't even believe you can get to an outcome, you're not going to take the steps to get there.
Hmm.
And I was the same way in personal finance and the business. Like I didn't believe I can ever make money from helping people who need
Hmm.
help with their money. But no, like I had to step out of myself and try something new, try a path that is proven.
Hmm.
And I know that a lot of social workers feel the pain of inflation and feel the pain
Hmm.
of the burnout that comes with their job. Um, and just trying to bring hope back. Like, if you can take care of your money and take care of your household, then you have more of yourself to give at work and you have
Hmm.
more of yourself to really like not feel like you have to sell yourself out to a for-profit company
Hmm.
for a sales job or, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Was that something that you'd always kind of believed, or were you on your own like personal journey and kind of developing this idea of like, oh, like this can be okay, we can do this in a like
Yeah.
single income household?
Yeah. My upbringing was kind of different. Like,
Hmm.
um, my parents were relatively well off. Like my dad's an accountant, my mom was a nurse practitioner, and we had money. But then I grew up the later part of my teenage years with my dad.
Hmm.
He ingrained some very frugal skills with us, we'll say that. Like only thrift stores buy secondhand. We're driving
Hmm.
cars that were like older than us. And
Yeah.
so I got a lot of those saving skills. But I realized as I was going into adulthood and as I was going into my marriage, like money is not just about saving. Like
Hmm.
I used to believe that if you're a nerd, like if you love numbers and if you're really good at saving, that means you're good with money. But that's
Hmm.
actually not even true. I know so many people who, are free spirits. They just live in life. They don't care about a plan and they can have a good relationship with their money.
Hmm.
And this kind of all came out when my wife and I were sharing our finances. Like I was very controlling over our money. I was
Hmm.
like, no, like there's no need to spend on, you don't need to get your hair done. You don't need
Hmm.
to, buy food out every week. I mean, every day of the week,
Hmm.
or even just like some little stuff too. And she kind of showed me like, why do we have money then, right? We're not
Fair
having
enough.
money to hoard it and just to like feel safe, but
Hmm.
we need to have a nice balance of like enjoyment and diligence so
Hmm.
that we create that life for us in the future while also enjoying life now. So
Hmm.
yeah.
That's true. And I think, I mean, at least what I've seen in the field is first, I think it starts in like college when
Oh yeah.
professors are telling us it sucks. You're gonna burn out. You're not gonna
Oh my
get paid
goodness.
anything. It's like it's
Yeah.
already ingrained into us. And so that's what we kind of expect that like, oh, this is just gonna like suck for a little bit, but I'm in it for the work and for the people. But then we're not able to enjoy our own life and we can achieve
Yeah.
that. Mhm.
Yeah, like, and we're young, we're
Yeah.
impressionable.
Hmm.
We sign up for the credit cards when we're 18, and that ends up being kind of like the death of us. We just keep
Hmm.
swiping and swiping, and, like student loans is not even all, right? Car
Yeah.
loans, credit cards, all that stuff ends up eating at us. And I, man, I've talked to so many social workers. They're like, yeah, I got about 20 and $30,000 in student loans and 15, $20,000 in credit cards. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like the interest
Oh
rates on
my.
those credit cards is crazy and makes
Yeah.
it a lot harder to get out. So it's not even just the size of the debt, but the type of debt we take on just
Mhm.
to partly cope with the
Oh yeah.
emotional part of social work and
Hmm.
life, because we're people too. We deal with stuff in our personal life. And
Hmm.
so getting that from all angles without a strong foundation with our
Hmm.
finances is just a breeding ground for, future disaster or not. being able to be protected from a blown out tire or
Hmm.
not being able to protect yourself from job loss, things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that is very true. I do think like a shift that I had was I think I was initially starting out in my career very much like other social workers when it was
Mhm.
like, ah, well, this is just what it is. This job sucks and like I'm just never gonna make any money and whatever. And I think I had to just shift my own mindset to be like, I can still like I still have to take ownership over my life, even if we're seeing like, oh, like the housing market isn't great or like the economy kind of sucks, and like maybe
Yeah.
overall like social workers are not paid what they should be paid for the work that we do.
Mhm.
I can still take ownership over my life and do something with it, with what's within my control. I don't have to like be so defeated and hopeless.
Exactly. And like that's it right there. The same thing we tell our clients. You
Hmm.
can't control the things you can't control.
Yeah.
And the person you have the most control over, the person that's with you 24/7, the person
Hmm.
that's overspending your bank account, you have control over that person.
Hmm.
And yeah, like that itself, if we can get ourselves and just have that awareness of what we're even spending on, it's
Hmm.
amazing what you can do with the 50 or $60,000 income. And
Yeah.
yeah, it may not look like the fancy trips all your friends are taking, or if they're also social workers and they're taking those trips, you probably know it's not.
Yep.
They're gonna feel it. They're gonna have a
Hmm.
hangover afterwards, a spending hangover. So yeah, and that's also like the what's the word? Like, I guess the thing with social media, and they say it all the time, I'm trying not to be cliche, but it really is like your social media is a highlight reel of people's
Oh
lives.
yeah.
You know, and to surround yourself with that, like essentially put your mind in an environment where that's all you're seeing. Of course
Hmm.
you want that. Right? Of course you want to go on those trips and take those nice pictures and stuff.
Hmm.
But I mean, same thing with how we approach social work. That person environment that's us. We are that person in an environment, not just
Yeah.
our physical environment of the people and the relationships we have, but the apps we frequent, the people we follow on social media, the ads we see,
Hmm.
um, and the power of like the algorithms, TikTok algorithms, Amazon, Facebook, all that
Oh
stuff.
yeah.
The more you engage with some of the things you want to buy, whether it's makeup, gadgets,
Hmm.
courses, whatever, it's just going to keep feeding you that. And but
Hmm.
you have control. You have a power button on your phone. You can
That's true.
make
Yeah. That is like really powerful though, because I remember like when I was in the thick of it in my first job post grad, it was just that cycle of like buying things on Amazon because it was like so easy and it made me feel a little
Yeah.
good after feeling like so defeated at my job, or the feeling I didn't have the energy to like cook at home, so I just Uber Eat something. And it's like
Mhm.
I get like everything in moderation and there can be a balance there, but when that is becoming a habit and a pattern, that's not good. That's just creating more stress in my life and also just physically not feeling good.
Yeah, absolutely. And usually what ends people up in like some financial issues, yeah, every now and then you have those major events, whether it's like a health scare or your car
Hmm.
wreck and things like that, they can absolutely put you in debt. But the real like culprit of financial problems, especially with helping professions, those of us who are social workers or case
Hmm.
managers or whatever, is like those little purchases, $20 here, $50 here,
Hmm.
even as like spending for someone else's meal, all that stuff adds up. And
Yeah.
I actually had a client and a friend I was working with. She's not a social worker, but she's in the field. She does uh like child welfare, but like on the legal side.
Hmm.
And she found that she spent like $1,500 eating out one month. Another month it was 2,500. Like
My gosh.
more food on eating out than like people spend on rent.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
that was part because the drinks and then paying for
Hmm.
other people and also like regularly getting $80 meals eating out. And maybe
Yeah.
like that's her income's a little more, right? But even on a micro sense, like for social workers, if you're eating out $15 every day, versus bringing lunch that's like
Hmm.
$3, $12 a day adds up,
Hmm.
for 20 days of a month. And
Yeah.
so it's kind of that death by a thousand cuts. And we're like, dang, I don't have the house. I don't have the
Hmm.
savings. I don't have the car. Or if you do have the car, you have the payments.
Hmm.
Um, but there's so much power in like when you understand personal finance, even at like a basic level, you don't have to be
Hmm.
super complex with it. But if you can buy car in cash and it's just a few years older, like that'll save you so much money. And I could probably get into the math of all that stuff if you want to. Um, and just like quick math, they kind of build hope, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, so before we get into that, when we kind of use the term financial wellness, as we kind of get into the nitty-gritty of what that can look like, what do you think
Mhm.
that means? I know that definition can be different for everyone, but like for
Yeah.
you, what do you envision?
Yeah, like when I approach financial wellness, it's really about like having a good relationship with your money
Mm-hmm.
so that not only you're taken care of now, but you're taken care of in the future, in your job, in your relationships, in your mental health. The thing I always say is that financial wellness isn't about getting rich, even though that'd be really great, but
Mm-hmm.
it's having a rich life with the money that you have, having the contentment,
Mm-hmm.
um, essentially having the balance to where you have the choice to walk into your job and enjoy it. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you're financially set and you can find another job that pays you more, but you have the choice to stay and you
Mm-hmm.
have that autonomy, then you know that you're doing work that you love
Mm-hmm.
instead of like selling yourself out because there's no other choice in terms of
Mm-hmm.
what you can do with a social work degree, which is absolutely false. Like there are so many social workers that have the capability to make like six figures. Like they just
Mm-hmm.
have the skill set. Um, and you just, if you get different credentials or you just get in different markets and things like that, you absolutely can make six figures.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this is totally an aside, but for the social workers out there, a lot of you have the ingredients and the skills to become, life coaches. It doesn't,
Very
if
true.
if you don't want to necessarily go into like the clinical space and diagnoses and
Mm-hmm.
stuff, you have, maybe meditation history, you have wellness, like physical health and stuff like that. But overall, yeah, financial wellness is very in line with like that financial freedom, financial independence, but those are typically marked by numbers in your bank account, whereas
Mm-hmm.
like financial wellness is more of like a lifestyle.
Mm. I like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is very true because I do see a lot of people getting into just the financial space, personal finance
Mhm.
space, and them thinking like, well, I just want to end up rich from this. And so to be able to
Mhm.
like frame it in that way of like just having a rich life with what you make, I think is really valuable because it does make that shift where the focus is feeling fulfilled in your life, not necessarily like making more money, but knowing like we can make this work. It might be a struggle for a minute. We might have some things to work out, but it can happen.
Absolutely. And like the thing I also noticed a couple years ago around COVID, when
Mm-hmm.
it comes to like influencers and things in the personal finance space, you had people like Graham Stephan, Meet Kevin. Yeah, you had these like real estate people who make a lot of money but have really important personal finance skills to teach.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, they democratized personal finance information to make it accessible to most people.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they hit a certain part of the market that like their demographic of people, it isn't everyone,
Mm-hmm.
right? The social workers may not appeal to that.
Yeah.
And so what kind of came out of that were a bunch of other smaller um, entrepreneurs and influencers that are able to make personal finance digestible and relevant to social workers or to
Mm-hmm.
stay-at-home moms or different life situations. It only just takes a little bit of Google searching or something like that to find those role models for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I actually didn't know about this until like last year that there's actually such a thing as financial social workers, and there are people out there creating content.
Oh.
If you out there, if any of you who are watching are number savvy and like personal finance, maybe you getting into the space and you becoming that leader for other people,
Mm-hmm.
it may just change their life too. So
Yeah. That is very true. Ugh, we have a lot of skills.
yeah,
Good. I
yeah.
do like that you mentioned like getting into life coaching because I've noticed like that's something I've considered as in the process like starting my own practice
Mhm.
because to me, not just like financially is it nice, but I think also just like in terms of preventing burnout and being able to like feel
Yeah,
like you have a more balanced schedule. Because not to say that that like working with people in like a life coaching capacity is not hard, but it's definitely different than when you have to work with
yeah.
like insurance companies and a mental health diagnosis and safety and all of that, where it can just be like, okay, we can breathe for a second and just like support this person in a way that's not completely exhausting.
Yeah. And like what I've really loved. So financial coaching, I always thought it fit under the umbrella of financial services, like financial
Mm,
advising, accounting, all that stuff, but it actually
yeah,
fits a lot more under life coaching because you're dealing with people and people
right.
skills. And, sometimes you're dealing with some financial trauma and like what I've really loved about it is because I have ownership over my business about what I can
Hmm.
say, what I do, when I work, when I don't work. And
It's good
like,
stuff.
I don't, yeah, I'm not like reporting to anyone else other than the
Hmm.
client that's paying me or the
Yeah.
audience member that's viewing me. And, no, it's like one of the most empowering things I've ever done.
Hmm.
And I know a lot of social workers out there don't have like the business background or whatever, but like business is actually surprisingly simple. And if you
Hmm.
just find a way to make money from helping people, that's all it is. You
Hmm.
help people with, their relationships. You help people with their burnout or whatever aspect you're passionate about. For me, it's not necessarily like helping people create a budget, which is part of it. It's helping
Hmm.
people get a snapshot of their financial situation to create that
Hmm.
future, whether it's within social work or transitioning out of it. And like, if you're able to help people, they'll be glad to pay you for it. And so that's just kind
Hmm.
of a little aside for any social workers out there that ever had the idea of starting a business. You absolutely can. Like today
Hmm.
is the easiest it's been to start a business because you just need a social media profile. So
Honestly true. Yeah,
yeah,
that's very true. I
yeah.
also just love to see social workers getting more into the coaching space because for a
Hmm.
little bit I kind of had a hang up about coaching because I was just like,
Hmm.
these are just like random people off the street telling
Yeah.
people how to
And
live.
it
And
absolutely
it
could
could
be.
be, and it very well
Yeah.
could be, and they could also
Yeah.
be skilled and good at what they do. But it's just like nice to see people with that social work profession like being seen for the work that they're doing and like compensated
Hmm.
fairly. So it's really exciting. I
Yeah.
do wonder, like in terms of financial wellness for social workers, we talked about like some barriers, like in terms of just like that mindset piece. Are there other things you notice that are specific to social workers that are just like barriers to achieving financial wellness?
Yeah, I think a big part is just that we don't pay attention to it
Mm,
because we are overwhelmed.
yeah.
We only have so many things on our mind at the same time, and the idea of having to check my bank account every week or so, it's scary. It's
Hmm.
like I don't want to know how much is in there sometimes.
Yeah.
But honestly, like, and I've seen this a lot in my weight loss journey too, that
Hmm.
if you just have some level of mindfulness over what
Hmm.
you have, where it's going, that itself will be a really good check and balance to prevent you from completely overspending. Because
Hmm.
the extra, and this is kind of like behind the scenes, like the thing I work with clients first on is what I call a spending audit. So essentially, and you can do it too, whoever's listening, just take your last month of transactions, whether it's in one bank account or five cards or whatever, and then take all those transactions and categorize it. And then you have real numbers for what you're
Hmm.
spending. And you may find that you're spending $900 eating out. And
Hmm.
you may think that it was the inflation with the groceries, but it's really all the trips to the gas station where you're paying for gas and maybe you go in for a coffee, gas station coffee, thinking you're
Hmm.
saving money, but you pick up some snacks along the way. Just
Hmm.
like little things like that where we don't think about it in the moment. And in the big picture, it's like, oh, a $7 drink is not going to kill me. But,
Hmm.
$7 drinks 4 days a week on top of like, um, maybe you get some breakfast item. And then next thing you
Hmm.
know, your breakfast is costing $15 and your lunch is also costing 15. And then your
Hmm.
dinner, same thing. So like you're spending like $50 a day on food when it could
Hmm.
be like 15
Hmm.
and different things like that. And just having that awareness because the best way to save money is to say no to yourself.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
it really is that way. Every purchase you say no to is money saved,
Hmm.
right? And it's incredibly freeing when you realize I don't need all this stuff that I'm buying. Like this item that I'm buying doesn't actually add value or enjoyment to my life. It's just like a little flicker of like dopamine, right? Just
Hmm.
like feels good to get it. And then
Yeah.
same thing with clothes, same thing with shoes or experiences. And personal finance is so personal. But when you
Hmm.
have an awareness of what you're spending, then you can spend more on the things that add value, like your relationships.
Yeah.
Maybe it's, maybe you find it worth the money to get your hair done, your nails done, and massages and all that stuff. And you absolutely can do that.
Hmm.
But you have to cut the things that don't add value. So the subscriptions you're not using, change your insurance to get a lower cost. Like no one loves their insurance company necessarily,
Right.
right? Or like your phone provider. Like some of those are super easy to do, but
Hmm.
it's just we don't think about it. And yeah, like especially like my thing with insurance, oh my gosh. Like some people have the same insurance company from like when they're 18 and they keep that around longer than their relationships.
True.
And you can change your service providers and still
Hmm.
get the same coverage.
Yeah.
And yeah, like my wife and I, and this is obviously not sponsored,
Hmm.
but my wife and I switched from AT&T to Mint Mobile,
Hmm.
and we were spending like $130, $140 with AT&T just between the two of us. And then on Mint, we're spending 60, like $30 per line.
Yeah.
And like $80 a month is almost $1,000 a year. And it's the
Hmm.
same service. Like just like if you could find $80 a month to save, which is super easy to do,
Yeah.
$1,000 a year, and I can bet you could probably find at least $400 or $500 in your
Hmm.
account. And yeah, that adds up.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it really does. It reminds me when I started at the practice I was working at recently. I just
Hmm.
like signed up for insurance through work because
Hmm.
it was just like the easiest thing to do. Didn't really understand insurance and and all of that. So I'm like,
Yeah.
whatever. I'm just almost that idea of like, I'm just not going to think about it. This is the easier route. And a couple months before I left that job and like transitioned out to my own practice, I was like, oh my gosh, well, I have to like get on my own insurance. Let me do it through like the state marketplace. I have saved so much money. Like I was just like spending like thousands of dollars out of my paycheck for no reason. Like through the
Hmm.
state, it's like so much more affordable,
Yeah.
especially when like you're a parent and at least in New York State, like past a percentage or like certain amount of income, which is pretty
Hmm.
high, you can get some kind of tax credit or like your child can get insurance for free. So I'm like,
Yeah.
why isn't everybody doing this? I should have done this months ago.
Yeah. And like for us too, like they're privatizing child welfare in Texas. And so
Hmm.
my employer changed from the state of Texas where I got my insurance free, but I had to pay for my wife and our daughter, to
Hmm.
where now I have to pay for all of our insurance. But
Yeah.
with a single income as a social worker, check out, is it healthcare.gov or something? Whatever, the healthcare
Something like that.
marketplace.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, even if you pay something, it's subsidized. And
Hmm.
yeah, it's not like your gold standard Blue Cross Blue Shield where they cover everything and you just have this luxury treatment. But not everyone needs that either, especially
Yeah.
like if you're younger, if you don't have a lot of expenses and things like that.
Hmm.
I don't really I just need the bare bones of like, if I'm, literally get hit by a car and I'm stuck in the hospital, if they can cover like 90% of that bill, then
Hmm.
great, right? And just yeah, insurance is a big one. Car
Yeah.
payments, those are things that take like huge chunks out of your income.
Hmm.
And that is your wealth building tool. That's how you grow. Like your
Yeah.
income is what you use. Um, so yeah.
Okay. Now, I mean, this is something I want to get into a little bit because I think a lot of social workers listening, a lot of people are in
Mhm.
debt, especially
Oh yeah.
with student loans. So I do wonder, what's that balance or like what would you recommend for people who maybe have that social worker income or salary, they're trying to pay off their loans and they're doing all these other things. Like they've done the
Mhm.
spending audit, they're trying to get a hold of that stuff and things maybe are still like really hard, like are there any things that you would recommend for that debt
Yeah.
journey, which can be really difficult?
Yeah, and it's very dependent on like how big of a debt. Like some people went
Yeah.
to private schools out of state for their social work degree, and
Hmm.
so ends up being a lot more expensive than if
Yeah.
you got it from an in-state public institution, right? Um, and so like regardless of I guess what kind of debt you're in and stuff like that, it depends on how ready you are to take ownership of that,
Hmm.
right? And I know a lot in social work the possibility of student loan forgiveness is a little more realistic because at least
Yeah.
I don't know if it's outside of Texas too, but they have like public service, like if you work 10 years at an
Yep.
agency or whatever,
Hmm.
then you can get your student loans forgiven. only if that loan meets certain criteria. It's not all student loans, just so
Right.
y'all know. Like you have to be very certain that your type of loan is the one that could be forgiven, and then you have to make sure you do all the steps to get it forgiven. And
Hmm.
that's over 10 years of work, or um, I'm fairly certain it's 10 years. I don't think it's 5, but
It's 10,
uh,
at least
yeah,
from what I'm aware of. Yeah.
yeah. And so like imagine like, do you want to keep that student loan for 10 years with the possibility that it's getting forgiven? Or if you take ownership, you could pay it off in 3 or 4
Hmm.
years. And that gives you 5, 6 years of your life back
Yeah.
because you were intentional, right? And same thing with your cars, same thing with credit cards and stuff like that. It's about like, how ready are you to stop? Like, are
Hmm.
you ready for change? And some people, it's almost like a level of acceptance, like maybe I'm not ready for change
Hmm.
because change is scary. And the same way we are motivating and empowering our clients for change,
Hmm.
like we are clients that need changing too,
This is
you know?
true.
Yeah, and
Hmm.
oftentimes it's not the know-how. Like, yeah, you make more money, you spend less money, and then magic happens and you're all better, right?
Hmm.
But if you just apply that to anything else, it's like, oh, well then like why are people still addicted to substances? Why are people still addicted to food or
Hmm.
spending? And it's like it's not just the knowledge that we're
Yeah.
lacking. It's one like that belief and also that readiness for change.
Hmm.
And any change is scary, whether it's by your choice or by your circumstances.
Yeah.
Um, but the theme is you are with you 24/7. You have control over your thoughts, your
Hmm.
behaviors, and all that stuff trickles down. And then
Yeah.
by just having that self-awareness, and you get a lot of self-discovery as you're working on your finances too, on
Hmm.
like why I'm spending, like, oh, I spend more whenever clients are cussing me out,
Interesting.
uh, or like there's different things like that.
Yeah.
Like, um, yeah, that you realize, oh, I'm actually trying to fill a void that I should be getting from my relationships, or
Mm.
maybe my faith, or maybe I need counseling instead of
Hmm.
retail therapy. So really, it's like,
True.
yeah, it's in terms of like an actual payoff plan. I mean, the first step I recommend is just getting like numbers and
Yeah.
facts in front of you, and that's finding out exactly how much you owe,
Hmm.
exactly how much you're spending. And sometimes seeing the weight of that could make you ready for change. Because
Hmm.
unless you recognize the act, like the monster in the bed, like you may not want to because it's,
Hmm.
it's scary.
That is. That's very true. I remember that just in my, I mean, like, finances have always been a little, yeah, I've ignored them a little bit.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
and then after I graduated from school, I knew like, okay, I got these student loans to pay off. I was living in New York City at the time. That's an expensive place to live.
Absolutely.
And then like I got married and then I had a baby. I'm like, oh my gosh, like life is becoming very expensive all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And I think it was almost like worse and way more stressful living in that unknown versus
Hmm.
when I was just like, okay, it's time to face this. Let's sit down, let's write out the numbers, let's actually like see what we're dealing with. And even though like it still was like a big number, like I think I can't remember now, like it was over $150,000 including student loans.
Hmm.
But it was like such a relief after that to be like, honestly, this wasn't as bad as I like had built it up in my mind. And from
Yeah.
that, you can like make a plan and you can be like, oh, I keep thinking this is just something I have to like live the rest of my life with. But it's not like this is doable. We are just like fed a lot of like scary things about like, well, this is just your life and you're never going to get out of this and it's all consuming.
Mm.
It's like, no, like when you have the numbers, you can do something with that.
Yeah, and like the thing with debt, essentially you're paying off past mistakes,
Yeah.
right? And think about it like when you're working with clients in addiction,
Hmm.
they're like them getting sober, they have to deal with a lot of their past mistakes, the
Yeah.
things that have hurt them, the things they've done to hurt people. And it's like you got to bring that same hope, like moving forward, looking forward,
Hmm.
that we're not defined by what happened in the past or what happened to us or whatever, but it's still our responsibility from this point moving forward,
Hmm.
having the knowledge, having the resources to get where we want to, right?
Yeah.
So,
That's very true. It's so funny because I look back at my younger self and like I wanted to go to a really cool, important school. So I went to Columbia and I moved to New York. And I mean, I was only at Columbia for 1 year because I did advanced standing to get my master's.
Hmm.
I wouldn't do that now. Like, I'm just like,
Yeah.
not that it was a waste, because I still think it was a valuable experience. And now I get like the cool
Yeah.
thing of saying I went to Columbia, but like, that's about it. I still got loans to pay off. And
Yeah.
it's the same degree. Like, everyone is still a social worker at the end of the day with the same degree that's accredited by the same institution. Like, you're good. You
Yeah.
don't need to go to the fanciest school. Like, do what makes sense, honestly, financially for your life. Because now I look back and I'm like, ugh, I wish I'd like swallowed my pride a little bit and just like went to the state school for my
Yeah.
master's.
Absolutely. And like the thing with school, student loans obviously are a big issue. And the whole idea that student loans aren't even bankruptable is like ethically to me, that's like, that sucks, right?
Mhm.
I was blessed to not only like have a scholarship for my bachelor's level, but my employer paid for my master's level. And
It's huge, yeah.
if any of you bachelor level social workers, or even, don't even have your social work degree, but want to get into it, just there are employers that will pay for your degree.
Hmm.
And actually, and this is kind of, not, I guess not really a secret, but
Hmm.
like I get grants on top of my school getting paid for. So like I'm
Yeah.
getting my master's degree and they're paying me to do it. It's like the craziest thing, right?
Amazing.
Yeah. And so like, and I was like, I had to juggle the math. I was like, I want to get this degree as fast as I can, but I would
Hmm.
have to pay out of pocket versus taking my time, getting my employer to pay for it. And when I did the math, I came out positive, like, a lot of money,
Hmm.
like $20,000 by doing this.
Yeah.
And so just like that's the idea of opportunity cost if you're not aware of what that concept is. It's like when you have two decisions, the cost of making one decision means you're saying no to another decision. And so,
Hmm.
like me, even paying cash for that program, I'm missing out on 9 months of income and I'm missing
Yeah.
out on, the growth and the raises that come with those 9 months of work versus, taking my time and keeping my bachelor level pay. Then I'm actually getting paid through education or getting paid through
Hmm.
grants. And then when I get my master's, now I have greater earning potential. And yeah, I know a lot of social workers aren't math nerds. Otherwise, you would not be in the field of social work. We're really touchy-feely. We like people. We like
Hmm.
talking to people. And so yeah, like that's my inner nerd that I actually had to like bury going into social work because I never intended to become a social worker. Like my
That's so
journey
funny.
into yeah, my journey into social work was a very personal thing that I was on track to do um, at first it was like engineering, medical stuff, and then I was doing nursing, but not so much because I like people. I like the
Hmm.
science and like the practice of medicine.
Yeah.
But I stepped away from nursing. I had like a year left to my bachelor's degree, and it was really because I had an experience going through recovery myself of like,
Hmm.
oh, this is what mental health is. These are
Hmm.
what groups are. These are what social services are. And like, I want to make that kind of impact because
Hmm.
I've been on the receiving end of that impact. And so that's what led me into social work and then ultimately financial coaching,
Hmm.
because I get to make that same impact with people with their money.
Hmm.
And so yeah, I know how much money how much like income I stepped away from becoming a nurse or becoming
Hmm.
a doctor, all that stuff. And that's okay. And that's part of
Hmm.
that financial wellness because it's not just about the numbers. Like I see
Yeah.
so many um, people in finance or whatever, banking, people who are software engineers and stuff like that. And they do great work, right? Like very valuable work.
Hmm.
But in terms of like fulfilling work, a lot of them will say it's pretty soul sucking,
Mm.
and like my friend bought $1,000 chair and like he bought like a brand new car and all this stuff. Like he makes a lot of money. Yet
Hmm.
at the same time, it's not fulfilling work,
Yeah.
right? And so, I mean, that work-life balance and how you spend your money is absolutely personal. But
Hmm.
like if you can do work you love, that's really the goal. Like people want to retire because they want to stop working, but the reality is a lot of people unretire because they can't not work. And
Hmm.
so if you could find that retirement job, that job that's like, I can do this and not get paid and still be happy with my life.
Yeah.
Obviously, you need to get paid to pay your bills, but yeah, like that really is what we're looking for. Like
Hmm.
bringing that purpose to someone's life, the clients we serve, or the team we serve, or whatever it is. Like if you can find that, and a lot of people find that in social work, it may not be your current position. You may
Hmm.
move to a different specialty. You may move, out of the nonprofit world into private practice.
Hmm.
Or if you're in private practice, maybe you're moving away from dealing with insurance and doing it like concierge and no insurance. And like
Hmm.
there's so many ways to, employ your social work skills. It's amazing, especially if you have like community practice or like administrative practice. Those skills highly valuable in terms of leading teams and stuff like that. So,
Yeah, that's very true. Ugh, this has been great. Now, as we kind of wrap up, what, on everything that we talked about, what's
hmm,
just like one piece of advice you would give to social workers listening?
man, one piece of
I know,
advice.
it's a very hard question.
Yeah, I mean, really like my piece of advice I would give is just think about like where you are in your environment and then place yourself in an environment that will allow you to succeed, right?
Hmm.
So sometimes that means letting go of friends that
Hmm.
always take you out every weekend and have you spending. Or maybe that means you got to unfollow some people on social media, or that means you got to cut up your credit card so you're not using them all the time.
Yeah.
And so like that itself, changing your environment will automatically change some of the systems you use for spending. It'll change, the inputs, right? The
Hmm.
negativity, the pessimism when it comes about money. And then you place yourself in an environment that builds you up it, with people around you who are on track to get out of their debt too.
Hmm.
Um, or just like you're obviously going to be around people all the time who are negative and negative Nancy's and all that stuff. But there are so many people out there that are just not as vocal.
Yeah.
I like my background in financial coaching. I got trained through Dave Ramsey's program, and so I'm a huge believer in his course. It's called Financial Peace University, and it's only like $80. And if
Hmm.
$80 can help you save $10,000 a year, like that's like the easiest decision, right?
Very
But
true.
it's never just like the logical sense. It's
Hmm.
scary, right? But if you're gonna spend $80 on anything else, like just give it a try.
Hmm.
Um, and things like that. But in terms of like non-advice and just like mindset stuff, like if I can do it, if we can do it, anyone out there can do it, right?
Hmm.
You don't have to give up on your dreams of owning a house or dreams of being debt free and stuff like that just because it seems insurmountable. But a lot of times that just comes with being alone. Like one
Hmm.
of my clients that I work with, they're like, one of the biggest benefits of financial coaching wasn't even the numbers. It was just being able to talk about it with someone without feeling like crap about myself or feeling ashamed and alone.
Yeah.
And because a lot of times you're in an echo chamber of your own thoughts. And when you can like be open and say like, all this debt makes me scared, and you
Hmm.
tell someone that, like that itself is so freeing. And then you're like, oh, now there are possibilities for change.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's
It's very
a
true.
little encouragement that it doesn't have to be a financial coach. Just talk to
Hmm.
someone about the money issues and your counselor or whoever. And a lot of, counselors and social workers aren't obviously trained unless they are like financial social workers. But,
Hmm.
you know, if you reach out to Laura and it's like, hey, I got money problems, she knows a person,
That's
hit
right.
me up. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you so much, Teddy, for coming on. I feel like this is a really valuable conversation for every single social worker to hear, especially as we're like dismantling a lot of these things that were ingrained into us.
Mhm.
Where can people continue to keep up with you?
Yeah, so I am split between a few social media platforms. I'm
Hmm.
most active on my Facebook, and I have a Facebook group called Journey to Financial Wellness. And
Awesome.
there, we can like post our wins and stuff like that. But I'm trying to get consistent with doing weekly calls on Saturday mornings on just support calls,
Hmm.
celebrating your wins, answering your questions. And we do other things too. Like one of the segments that I think I'll have a lot of fun doing is kind of like an anonymous Q&A, like asking for a friend. And so
Hmm.
you DM me your situation and I just talk about it, but obviously like confidentially, different things like that. Or you just add me a friend on Facebook, but I getting a little more on Instagram. I put a lot of my content on YouTube. So,
Awesome.
if you want to watch, like I created a video for that spending audit or a budgeting workshop and even just some like mindset stuff and tips. My ultimate goal is to do a lot more like better produced stuff on YouTube
Hmm.
and where it's like more engaging and all that. But in terms of like actually engaging with me, that Facebook group would probably be the most engagement Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome. Well, all that stuff will be linked below for those listening, so go keep up with Teddy. And thank you so much. We will see you next time.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I had a
Yeah,
blast. I love this conversation.
this has been great. Thanks.